made a whole custom roller for this, and I forgot. And I played the wrong one, Colin. So we're off to great stuff.
Monday.
It's that's a Monday. No, I have a whole custom. This is the Bitcoin Season 2 Writers Room, which is a very different format, unscripted. Colin and Charlie riffing on various topics,
chopping it up
around Bitcoin Season 2.
Inaugural episode, so apologies if this is a train wreck, but we're gonna have fun with it.
Yeah,
what kind of nonsense do we have on the docket for today, Charlie?
Well, first of all, okay, if you're listening to this, right, there's a Bitcoin Season 2. Normally got a live stream on Mondays. We drop a podcast on Thursdays, but Fridays, Colin and I are sitting down with like a handful of bullet items and very unscripted. This is more of an editorialized format, and we invite audience participation. So I don't know if you can comment on the Twitter or the X stream, but if you head over to YouTube and you post something, and if it's not, if it doesn't violate YouTube terms and services, we might highlight it. And if it does, we might
also highlight it. So no calls for violence, no vague threats or things that the regime deems unwarranted.
Threats have to be specific.
No malinformation, disinformation, or misinformation.
Yeah.
Actually, go ahead and throw all of them in there because we like.
Yeah. Honestly, this is the time and place. This is Bitcoin Season 2 Writers Room. We are. This is where we workshop ideas for things that could happen this season on Bitcoin. Colin and I, tug in cheek, we're really leaning into our word cell era, and
we are our word cell and our voice cell era.
Exactly, yeah. So we got our hair grown out. Colin will eventually shave. I don't know, maybe I'll grow out a beard, and we'll really look.
I think you could do a really good Hunter S. Thompson-esque mustache. I mean, like, if you just grow the mustache and get the spectacles, you'll have to get loaded up on a bunch of cocaine and margaritas before the show, but that's the only missing piece, really.
Yeah. Hunter Thompson, he was a fan of more interesting drugs. Coke was not really his specialty. It was more types of psychedelics in the desert. So anyway, enough about that. We actually have some topics that we may or may not get into. OpenSea, we had Adam Cochran make a whole goofy thread about this. We've got ZK and the pleb miner BitAxe. Colin and I will argue about that. And we've got other stuff. But at the end, if you stick around, we are going to really pander to the audience here, and we're going to do a motherfucking tier list. We are going to lean into the most clickable type of content, which is us ranking various things. And in this case, if you're familiar with the Bitcoin narratives over time, everybody's always got some price model that's hot. So we're gonna rank all the different like models for price prediction over the next several years, because Lord knows there's been plenty and there's a lot of good ones. So
good is all relative, though.
It is all relative. Colin, you want to actually let's do this OpenSea one, because I think it's kind of
let's lead with that, because I think we'll probably have just a few things to say about it, and then we can really kind of dig into ZK and the BitAxe and why you're wrong about this being a good idea. So this has been one of the bigger news items this week. I think the two biggest news items have been probably Pavel Durov's arrest. We're not going to cover that because there have been probably, there's been novels written probably already about the implications of that very harrowing thing. It's kind of out of the scope of the show. But OpenSea received a Wells notice from the SEC as the regulator says that NFTs are securities. So all of your monkey JPEGs and CryptoPunks are securities. If you own one, no problem. But if you made one, maybe move out of the country, go get a Colombian passport or something like that. But so basically, for those who don't know, a Wells notice is a notice from the SEC. It doesn't mean that there's any action being taken against you, but it does mean that the SEC is currently investigating your business practices and you might want to lawyer up. Now, as for why the SEC is going after OpenSea right now, no idea. I talked to a pretty sharp lawyer whose name will be undisclosed for this because I did not get his permission, but he's been active in the space for a long time. And he said that he has no idea why this is happening. I think most people who are generally skeptical of enforcement agencies will say this is just par for the course. They just try to ruin everything. They piss on everyone's Friday. So they're just going after OpenSea because they want to and because they're trying to continue to crack down on crypto stuff. That may be it. There's a part of me, my gut says that maybe I don't endorse this at all, but if I was the SEC and I was approaching this, and this is coming from someone who has no legal or regulatory background, but if you see these NFT marketplaces, basically listing these NFTs and these NFT series, and these NFTs have just had meteoric rises in value. You're also hearing rumors about wash trading between projects, trying to pump up the floor price. They are ripe for manipulation. That might be an angle that they try to go for. Whether or not you can deem these as securities, it seems kind of absurd to me. Maybe there is there is somewhat of a prerequisite for expecting these things to increase in value. Although if you ask a lot of Ordinals investors over the last year, that's not always the case. But maybe this is just juicy enough. It's a low-hanging fruit for them to pluck, so they're going after it. But the thing that I wanted to highlight, sorry, Charlie, if we can go over to Adam's tweet, I can share.
Adam Cochran, a bastion of like solid takes and information.
Always seems to have a take on things. I think he, I don't know if he's a lawyer by background. I seem to think at one point he had a bio that might not be wrong.
I think he's qualified to talk on anything and everything. We do know this.
Yeah, because he's on Twitter. So
yeah, and he's got a big platform. He's got 216,000 followers, and I wonder if those are 216,000 people who just watch him just to see what the hell he's going to say about something.
Yeah, this is a good question, and not to slam Adam too much. He's had some good analysis on DeFi in the day. His Twitter account really came up during DeFi summer, starting in 2020. But he basically makes this argument that OpenSea could fight this back with a writ of mandamus, which essentially is a legal writ that you would use to try to get an enforcement agency to do its job. So if you felt like some sort of regulatory agency in the US was not doing its job or not following its mandate, there we go.
Hey, there we go. This is actually a really useful feature now.
Yeah. So basically you're saying this agency is not doing what it should be doing, so it should take legal action against certain entities or perform a certain function. And so Adam is basically saying if OpenSea wants to fight this, they might do that and say, well, Disney has their own NFT collection and Amazon sells Rolexes and all of these other things. These are collectibles. They fit into the collectible bucket. So why isn't the SEC going after them? But whether or not you think that the SEC should sue Disney, I personally don't think that, or Amazon. The lawyer that I talked to basically said that this is nonsense and not really how it works. You can't use this as a legal defense. They could do this in an entirely other case and try to push for this, but it doesn't really help OpenSea in the event that they actually have to go to court or litigate with the SEC. So this is hopium, and it's really nothing more than that. But it makes for a nice story. We've got Charizard and Mickey Mouse like they're in some Super Smash Brothers, promo shot here.
Do you think this is an AI picture that he generated?
I don't know, but
because doesn't AI not allow you to do like copyright? I mean, these are the two most copyright images.
So Grok does. At least it did at first. I don't know if you saw, like, when Grok opened up its image generation, there were like all of these photos of like Peach doing coke and like like Mickey Mouse dressed up as like a Hamas freedom fighter from Palestine or something. So maybe this was Grok. Yeah, let's see. Make a picture of Mickey Mouse pissing on a Toyota.
Okay, let's just see.
Because I tried this. Yeah, okay. So
wow.
He's about to take a dump on it, though. It looks like he's pulling down his trousers to take a shit on a Prius. So you heard it here first in the Bitcoin Season 2 Writers Room. Mickey Mouse is an eco-terrorist. He hates electric vehicles and hybrids.
See, this is what you get on Writers Room. This is us workshopping ideas and that the producers can later cut from the show.
Yeah,
'cause they're
Will's gonna pull this segment after he sees this first
yeah.
episode. But, yeah, I don't know. To wrap this up, the writ of mandamus is not going to be a thing that it looks like OpenSea can use, despite Adam's suggestion here. And I want to kick it over to you before we dive into ZK and Bidax.
Yeah.
I think the biggest question mark here is if they do this to OpenSea, which is arguably the most popular, has been
They raise
historically
they're
NFT
billions of
platform,
dollars or something. Yeah.
a lot of volume. What does this mean for Magic Eden? What does this mean for Unisat? What does this mean for these more ordinals focused NFT platforms, right?
Well, this was kind of like one of the things that we were all talking about at the beginning of Ordinals is like, well, so I mean, so first of all, Magic Eden did come out with a statement. They said we're not concerned in the short term. You know, we're not terribly worried. I don't remember exactly their reasoning or if they even gave a whole, more context to that. But this is interesting that you bring this up because at the early days of Ordinals, some of the early conversations were like, well, okay, there is this question of whether NFTs are securities. This is looming over everybody's heads. But because for Ordinals and inscriptions, you are actually owning the Satoshis themselves. That is actually what it is. So there's no contract address. So a lot of us were kind of joking a bit tongue in cheek because we know this is a goofy idea, but you could say, well, I just simply do not believe in ordinal theory here in this courtroom. I do not ascribe to it. I elect to opt out. I consider this to be a normal UTXO. But because we're actually just talking about the single Satoshis, which again, many argue don't exist, but we can track them through a system. And then the inscriptions themselves, you have copies of them on every node. It's part of the initial block download process whenever you sync a full Bitcoin node. So, and then also like the SEC has clearly said that Bitcoin's not a security, whereas these other blockchains are not as clear. ETH maybe has been crossing the chasm here a bit, but like, Bitcoin, these are proof of work assets. Is a proof of work UTXOs generated through proof of work, and uh, and now do these UTXOs, when you view them through a different lens, are they now securities? This is really interesting. There's certainly going to be legal arguments on this if the whole NFT thing continues to spin up into like legal discourse. I think there's a lot of smoke bombs that Bitcoiners and ordinals enjoyers can throw into the mix to say, we're different. Somehow our assets are treated differently, at least from an ownership standpoint. I think this probably doesn't apply if you're in the business of issuing them or in the business of like providing a platform to settle and trade them. But this might be a very good smokescreen for the owners of these to not have to be as worried. I don't really know like what the recourse is. I don't like study this type of law. So
yeah, it's an interesting question. Typically, the owners of these crypto securities, as defined by the SEC, are never really that. They've either made or lost money, and the SEC doesn't care about them. They care about the issuers because they're trying to protect the consumer.
I
Uncle
feel
Sam
so
telling you
protected
not
right
to buy
now.
those. Don't buy those scary crypto tokens.
I feel so protected.
I'm always basking in the glory that is the U.S. agency or administrative state. So, but no, I think that you raise a good point about the SAT ownership. I think that the biggest question here will be for NFTs going forward, how much of a link can they make between basically like a centralized issuer creating some sort of investment contract, right? Where the purchasers are expecting returns. I mean, that last part's going to be hard because everyone who buys a mint or buys into a mint is expecting to make money, right? The same thing with ICOs. Whether or not you're going to make money is another thing entirely. But that's kind of like, it seems to be anything. I mean, people collect things all the time expecting there to be return on that investment. The other thing, the last thing I'll say here, just piggybacking on one of the things that you said, or made me think of it, was like the main argument against this from people in the crypto ecosystem is going to be these are pieces of art. And I'm not gonna put specific projects on blast, but Uncommon Goods, like Casey Rotomore, what they're doing there, I could see that being legitimately talked about as an art collection, because it
Yeah.
really is. They're putting a lot of time into these photo shoots and the costumes, and it's kind of cool. You know, Bored Apes or the Lions. I don't even remember what that one. Like these generative ones. It's just kind of a stretch. You're not putting the work into each individual piece. You're creating like 12 presets for different features and then just spitting them out. And I think that's could be
Bro,
problematic.
but the thing I always come back to, this is a bit of like a cop-out answer, but just the language and the rubric and the tests, Howie or otherwise, to determine if something is a security in the US. These are ancient, mechanisms of classifying different types of investments. And
Yeah.
like there's like this US securities law, or the idea of a security, doesn't it go back like over 100 years or something? Like,
Yeah, I think the Howie test is from the 30s.
yeah, it's like, yeah. And then there's like another test which I was reading about the other day, but yeah, like
1946 originated Supreme Court case SEC versus WJ Howie and Company.
yeah. So like I just strongly believe that you can't fit most of these new crypto assets into the securities box. There is, and we might want to argue about this someday, on another writer's room, but there's this idea that a blockchain can launch as a security and then eventually evolve into something which isn't a security. This is the kind of the case for a lot of Ethereums try to make
Yeah.
for their blockchain.
Which is wild to me, because like I don't like, full stop, I don't want the SEC to classify these things as securities. I just generally don't like the creeping arm of the administrative state trying to
Same,
tell
yeah.
Americans what they can do with their money. If you want to gamble it on shit coins, that's totally your prerogative. That being said, the idea that Ethereum is in any way decentralized is laughable, but I know you're not really saying that necessarily. Maybe you are. I think that's a hard thing to.
I'm leaving the door open to entertain this idea,
Yeah,
because it's a spectrum, right? Like Ethereum is more decentralized than most of these other crypto assets.
I would agree with that. Yeah,
And yeah, but at the same time, like 80 to 90% of all the block builders are just three entities who co-locate in a single data center outside Tokyo. Like
yeah,
that is also a reality of
yeah.
Ethereum. And then there's the Joseph Lubin Vitalik cloud swirling over this. But this is not Ethereum season 1. This is Bitcoin
No, this is
season.
Bitcoin season 1, and
This
so
is Bitcoin.
maybe Bitcoin season 2. Sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe a good segue into one of the crazier things I have seen recently. God bless the ordinal degens. They come with fresh
God bless.
ideas, and they are here to save Bitcoin because they've thought about it for all of 2 minutes. Not putting ZK Shark on blast
Wow,
here.
there's an
I don't
appeal
know.
to authority. Wow, an appeal to authority, an appeal to experience.
I'm
I've been
calling.
in Bitcoin for 4 or 5 whole years. You need to listen to me.
No. I'm actually. I actually. I launder all of my ideas through Bitcoin Core. So
Yeah.
it's not my expertise here.
Actually, before
You're
we get
leaning
too
on.
far, I wanna say we're not unbiased. We have one of us has an OMB book on the behind, shout out
And
ZK.
shout out
We're
ZK
There's not
Shark.
an unbiased opinion here.
Not and just quick before we get into this, I'm not attacking ZK as a person. I know nothing about him or them. Sure, they're great. I just want to look at this idea because I think that what he's saying here is fundamentally like ideological, and part of me loves that, but it's just so unrealistic, and like it's not going to move the needle on decentralizing Bitcoin.
Man, we could jump right into, because I would say this is really at its core a pleb mining. It's like the neo pleb miner
Yes.
movement, and
Mhm.
the pleb miners have always been an unrealistic camp.
Yeah, that's true. That's
But
true. So
also
do you
pleb
want to
miners.
just give a quick recap
Yeah,
of
yeah.
of
You you
of the
you give a
news?
quick recap of this, I think.
Well, I don't know if I fully understand it. So it's like
Okay.
basically, so ZK Shark, famously, OMB maxi bit or
Ordinal
ordinal maxi
maxi bid
bit.
founder, yeah. He's
Yeah,
he's kind of a mystique, a bit of an aura about him,
yeah.
anonymous.
One of
Uh,
the most popular ordinals collections, inscriptions collections. We're using these words interchangeably. It's kind of like the way that
yeah,
people use ASICs to talk about miners.
yeah.
But anyway,
And
the
also a little
founder,
bit more context, he's like of the money that's from the OMB collection he's raised, put a lot of it back in the ecosystem. There's a huge grants program, really strongly advocates for privacy and Bitcoin, certain Bitcoin development and ordinals development. So like this guy puts his money where his mouth is. He feels very strongly and he has very condemning words for people who he doesn't like. And he's really emphasizing that this is a collection. There's no utility. This is just an art collection.
yeah,
Collectors collect, traders trade. We only want collectors to own OMB. So that's the whole
which
idea.
is very different from another mining related inscription series, which we might touch on at the end. And
Yeah,
yeah,
we could. Yeah.
we
Okay,
should. I
so
mean, it's kind of it deserves to be in conversation with this. But so it seems like ZK Shark is basically saying, he wants to raise a pleb army of BitAxe miners to fight Bitcoin mining centralization. That's kind of the idea? Is that
that's
the
the high. Yeah, if you want to put it
yeah,
in one line, that's kind of it.
okay. And for viewers who don't know what the BitAxe is, it's a neat little USB plugin with like I guess one ASIC chip. I don't know how many ASICs it has on it. There it is. And what it essentially acts as is it's a mini ASIC miner. I think it produces like 3 terahash or something like that, maybe
Um,
less.
yeah, it depends. I think it's actually in the gigahash. So I think it's actually more
Oh, is
like
it really?
100
Okay,
giga.
so it's not even pissing in the ocean. It's like pissing on a TV screen that's projecting the ocean. Um,
Well, it's also really efficient. So this is
yeah.
down the road. These are details. So
Yeah, so the BitAxe is basically a way for you to plug in, an ASIC to your computer and run it in what we call lottery mine. You would probably point this at like CK Pool, which is a how would you put it? It's a solo miners pool, and the only reason why it has the pool architecture is because you're not going to be building blocks with this. CK Pool takes care of building your block templates for you, and they coordinate your hash rate to publish the block if you find it. And then CK Pool takes a modest fee, compared to, well, it's actually probably not that modest, but if you're lottery mining, then you're not going to expect to make anything anyway, and they'll take a little chunk of the block reward that you get. The reason we
yeah, I
call it
mean,
lottery mining is for the same reason that you think your chances of actually hitting a block with one of these things are astronomical. I mean, like you have a better chance of finding a leprechaun, getting pegged by a unicorn in the wild than you do from running one
Cindy
of
claps
these
at that one. So shout outs.
things. Thank you, Sydney. So
Well, so like there is lottery mining, but he actually kind of does a good top down like why like he does a good problem statement. He says here's a response. Here are some solutions. I'm going to be a little close-fisted and not super I'm not going to like reveal my hand on some of these projects I'm working towards. But he's like, there are ideas, there's ways this can be improved upon. And he has a couple sections on like different ways that home miners can compete. I actually think that's a pretty good point of where
mhm.
I think you can have some pretty easy like, you know,
I
uh
I agree with that point,
yeah.
that economically speaking, if you're lottery mining, it makes more sense to have a low terahash machine that's not consuming a lot of watts of energy. If you plug in an S19 or an S21 and you're lottery mining, you're just going to burn huge energy bills and never make any money.
Okay, so he puts out this problem statement of the C word, centralization, and he identifies what this is a pretty common talking point in a lot of the Bitcoin circles. There's a hardware monopoly or duopoly. We talk about this on Mining Pod, how that might be changing, but still, 80-90% of all ASICs are produced by a single entity. This can be sensitive geopolitically. He is dead on with identifying this problem statement. Then we also have this block template cartelization of some kind, where we may have fewer pools than it appears. There's some good research that backs this up. This is a point of concern for the Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining ecosystem as well. Both like good identifications of like,
Legitimate points.
yeah,
Very
really cool.
legitimate points.
And I'll make this point, like, this is coming from like the historically like the degen collector camp. Like, when have NFT people ever cared about Bitcoin about these things? Like, this has never been a thing that these like it's like the degen class, I would say, have actually ever cared about. And here we are, one of like the foremost I thought leaders in the space, like really making this the point of a thought piece. So
And shout out to ZK for that. The crossover between minor curious, Bitcoiners and Ordinals degens is massive. It's a huge Venn diagram, and it's honestly been one of the more heartening trends to come out of the inscription bubble, right? Same
yeah,
thing with like them running full nodes and figuring out how transactions work. Some
yeah,
of the most technically proficient and curious members of the Bitcoin ecosystem currently are guys and gals speculating on JPEGs, and that may trigger people. Thank
speaking
you.
of triggering
Thank
people
you,
built on
Bob.
Bitcoin, yeah,
No, just to be clarified, the unicorn is pegging the leprechaun.
yeah,
It
yeah,
wouldn't be as exciting the other way around. Um,
exactly. I thought that was obvious, but
anyway, shout out to these ordinal and inscriptions degens, because they actually are trying to figure out how Bitcoin works and are trying to work through solutions to some of the biggest problems.
yeah, I think one of the places we could actually kind of we could we could just go back and forth on is just the entire idea of home mining in general and um efficient but comparatively low hash rate, the ability to produce any kind of amount of meaningful hash rate.
Yep.
And this is where the bit accenters of the chat section comes in, because just for some context, like Colin, you and I have seen every single conceivable like retail focused home mining idea under the sun. Like um it seems like every bull cycle there's some new thing that plugs into your heater, or it runs off a USB on your computer, or
Or
it
you
led
just do what I did last cycle, buy 5 S9s, put them in your basement in Denver, and just let the heat from them rise up through the floorboards in the most inefficient way to heat your home imaginable. But
exactly. But that's like you kind of acting like a hobby miner, whereas I would put the
yeah,
BitAxe more in the plug and play, like almost consumer focused like mining product camp. It actually really has hit an interesting sweet spot where it's probably the closest thing I've ever seen to a pragmatic, off the shelf, plug and play Bitcoin miner targeted towards like home miners who want to tinker and not have to, but not be on the hook to actually manage these things.
yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's kind of the mining counterpart to plug and play nodes like Nodal or Umbrella.
Yeah, that's a
Umbrella.
good, yeah. Umbrella.
I don't know if Nodal is even still active, but you had this huge sweeping interest in these plug and play nodes back in like 2019, 2020, and they were a way for plebs to easily bootstrap the Bitcoin network and manage anything they wanted to, from Bitcoin Core node to their own wallets locally to Lightning nodes. And it was a very consumer facing product. And this is, to me, seems very much in the same vein to what you were saying. And the thing that I do appreciate about this, I think I would be blasting ZK a lot harder if he was encouraging all of his followers to go buy an S19 and plug it into their garage,
Yeah,
right?
that's just not practical. Like
No,
I
and
mean, how many
yeah,
people are gonna like light their houses on fire trying to like figure out that 240-volt outlet behind their
yeah.
uh
So the yeah, I mean,
router?
that's happened. And that even aside, just the dollars and cents of it. If he was encouraging people to lottery mine with one of those, even though your chances of hitting a block with those is theoretically higher, you're going to burn a lot more money trying to chase that block, right? So I would be much more inclined to call him an idiot if he were doing that, and actually get a little angry, because you're going to end up losing people a lot more money. If you're plugging in a BitAxe, the electrical footprint is going to be so much smaller that this is in some ways a safer way to lottery mine. But that being said, I think that maybe the point to make here is your chances are still like extremely low to hit something. And these people know that. He goes through the math here at the end.
Yeah.
But I think my main qualm with this is I don't think this actually fundamentally does anything
This is a
to
good
solve.
point. This is like a really good point to go back and forth on, because I think this gets to the core of the argument here.
So, and maybe we need to break down pool dynamics very succinctly for people.
Yeah.
So for those that don't understand how Bitcoin mining currently operates or the markets, and someone made this, I think it was who was it? It was someone either, I don't want to say the company, but it was some miner saying that a lot of Bitcoiners fundamentally don't understand mining. And I would alter that a little bit by saying they understand in theory how mining works. I don't think they understand how the mining business and how the mining industry currently operates.
I would agree. That's a really good way to refine that.
Yeah, I think that's the distinction because most Bitcoin miners know, Bitcoin mining ASIC or computer or whatever produces nonces, numbers only used once, until one of those nonces matches the hash that's under the current target. And then it produces the next block, and then it puts transactions in those blocks, and that becomes the next block in the longest line of the Bitcoin chain.
So like they understand the mechanics of how the process works.
Yes. But they don't understand the current landscape of Bitcoin mining companies. And I think a lot of Bitcoiners still imagine miners as honestly kind of solo mining. And it's this dude, who hasn't left his basement in 3 months and is operating 40 computers, and his wife left him because the noise was just too unbearable, right?
Yeah, that's more like 2014 and 2015 type Bitcoin miner.
Yeah, exactly. And now who's laughing now because that dude's rich and retired and he doesn't even interact on Bitcoin Twitter anymore because he doesn't have to. But so most Bitcoiners don't realize that the current mining industry is a really just kind of a gaggle of, on the infrastructure side, industrial scale miners spread out all over the world. The best and clearest and most concrete example of this is the public Bitcoin mining stock universe of the Hut 8s and the Bitdeers and the Riots and the Maras and the Clean Sparks of the world. But that's just the hardware side. On the software side, there are Bitcoin mining pools that aggregate hash rate and pay out miners a fee, or pay out miners an expected revenue stream for their hash rate that is tied to a metric called hash price, which is basically an expected value of hash rate based on the prevailing market rate to pay for that hash rate. So in the same way that, every week you can see the prices at the pump changing for your gas, hash price is kind of similar based on a number of dynamics that are all influencing each other. Bitcoin miners are paid out a prevailing market rate for the computing power they deliver to pools. And this is really important because this system called full pay per share is essentially why we have centralization in the Bitcoin mining industry, because Bitcoin miners don't want to stomach the variance of luck that they have with the network if they're delivering their hash rate directly to the network. And so they go to a pool who pays them out for that hash rate, and the pool stomachs the luck. Well, what happens when the pool can't stomach the luck? Then the pool goes to another pool and sells their hash rate to that pool. So you have you basically have a nucleus of pools in the Bitcoin mining industry that are consolidating around a handful of pools. Most famously, Ant Pool has hash rate under management on its face of like 25% of the network. But when you look at how many other pools are selling their hash rate to Ant Pool through a process that we call proxy pooling or proxy mining, it's more like 40 to 50% on a given day. And that's the backdrop for this centralization, right? It's not even that the pools themselves, right? Like everyone talks about Ant Pool and Foundry collectively, just on face value, they have like 50% of the pool hash of the entire network hash rate. You actually have Ant Pool, you have Ant Pool basically subsuming even more hash rate, because so-called independent pools outside of Ant Pool are actually selling their hash rate to Ant Pool. Ant Pool is constructing their blocks for them. This is a huge problem in terms of mining centralization for a number of reasons. But this is kind of at the backdrop of all that. Was that a pretty... Did I leave anything
Yeah, and
out?
I'll also actually point out, because I think this isn't actually emphasized enough, because I am a huge critic of this, and I think it's a huge deal, and it occupies so much of my thoughts. We don't have any evidence that this is actively harming the Bitcoin network currently, because the big question is someone going to use this to attack the Bitcoin network, or are there going to be transaction censorship? We don't have any evidence of that currently. It's just kind of like someone holds. It's almost like everyone's got everyone else's balls in a vice. Like they
Yeah.
could squeeze, but they're not, because for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So,
I have a
um,
hot take there where I actually think that it's a problem, but obviously it's not a problem until it's a problem. But one of the bigger threats is concentration of hash rate within public companies, because that's so
yeah, dude, I actually think. Well, first of all, yeah, shout out to the various public companies who a lot of the C-suite we know and love, but like the reality is this is just as big of an attack vector. If you look,
yeah.
because like right now, like hash rate, the data center operators are pretty geographically distributed, but we saw, I mean, so much of the money comes through North America, specifically the US, and is deployed back in North America. Yeah, there's a whole thing. So okay,
Yeah.
let's get back to
That's
this.
a whole other podcast topic.
Whole other podcast. So
Um, anyway, so this idea is trying to fight that censorship or fight that centralization threat.
yeah.
And my whole thesis on why this is nonsense, at least as like a long-term solution, is shout out to Ethan Vera at Luxor too, because he and I were talking about this a while back, and these are his words, so I don't want to take I don't want to take credit for his point, but if you really want to solve this centralization problem, you need to solve it within the FPPS ecosystem. Because at the end of the day, the largest miners in the world do not want variance in their rewards. They want constant payouts. So if we're going to truly solve for these centralization problems, we need to figure out how to iterate on that system. I'm a little bit cynical. I don't know if you can, right? Like
I
I
have
don't.
some I mean, I have some thoughts. I mean, it becomes a capital game, so you basically need at the capital and financing level that needs to be decentralized. It's weirdly enough like you don't decentralize the actual uh physical hash rate. That's not the issue. It's not the actual software side. It's the in the financing and the treasury management. But that would require the big boys with these giant deep fucking pockets to like know this and understand that and think that it's a reasonable way and direction to deploy capital towards that to finance and weather the variance of these FPPS pools. But let's say you're not one of those people. Even if you've raised a lot of money through Ordinals collection sales, that would still be a drop in the bucket in terms of like how much you can meaningfully impact that. So let's say that you have a big platform like ZK, and you have a platform which is easily and very quickly activated and immobilized, and has a history of being agnostic to like profitability, and will just has a bunch of Bitcoin, and they get like the whole purpose of this. And that is kind of what that's what I see is happening. Like what I see is a new pleb mining movement, and it runs up against all the same like criticisms and challenges that pleb mining has. The realities of actually trying to run any of this or to acquire or accumulate enough hash rate, even if you were to pool it to consistently produce a block, um, you still have challenges with that. But so much of the pleb mining movement can be solved with, or not solved, but can be improved with simple mobilization and mass. This is what I see um, you can do. Because I think there's enough people out there who would run these things at a loss. It might be kind of it might be related to the cycle of Bitcoin that we're on. But he points out, here's the basic math. You know, if we get 1 million of these things running with the current hash rate, you know, you'll hit a block a little over once a week. From that, you could distribute mining rewards if you were to pool these together.
Are there even 1 million Bitcoiners who know what my? I mean, let me rephrase that.
No, there's not. But think
Like, so, I guess that's one of my main criticisms here. Is like, what? So we get 1,000 Bitcoin degens to run these things, and we get a block like once a year, and everyone's super happy because as long as you okay, so sorry, there are so many tangents here.
Yeah.
The main threat, in my opinion, to block production is censorship of transactions. People always focus on 51% attacks and other things, and those are really bad. Reorg in the blockchain is not a good thing. We don't want it, but I don't see pools doing that because it actively interferes with their self-interest. But governments coming to them and putting a gun to their head and saying you have to censor these transactions, that's a real threat.
Yeah.
And could happen. And so what are we're going to just every year is just the one block for all the censored transactions or fighting for block space. And another part here too, I don't know how CK Pool is set up, but I don't think you can construct your own block templates.
No, but
So that's the other
imagine
piece.
you do demand pool with Stratum v2 templates.
That doesn't even work either, because Stratum v2 doesn't actually give miners the ability to construct their own template. They can just build their own template on their side and then audit it audit the pool's template, or pick a couple of templates that the pool makes and say, I want that template.
Ooh,
So
I
it's
also
really,
wonder. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I also wonder actually what the Bitaxe hardware limitations might be, because you have symbol limitations on Bitmain's hardware. Like
yeah,
it can be memory intensive to
right. And so like,
actually.
can you build blocks this way? It's like, can you connect this to Ocean Pool? And once Ocean Pool allows people to build their own blocks, like maybe that would help. But I guess that kind of gets down to my core criticism with this is like, it's a feel good story. It's vibes. Dare I say it is brat, but it is not potentially it's not going to move the needle in terms of solving some of these issues, because at the end of the day, you need to have enough hash rate that is agnostic to state pressure that will allow any transaction to come through, and also really allows the miner to build their own templates to factor in those transactions, right? So yeah, I don't know. Ocean is a better shot at
Yeah.
actually trying to help with this.
Honestly, shout out Ocean in this. I just wish they would get their messaging act together
Yeah,
over
it's funny,
over
and
that.
this is how you know that we're somewhat unbiased,
Yeah.
because Luke and Mechanic's views on inscriptions are ridiculous. Calling it spam is a total semantic disaster, and it's playing on people's emotions and it's manipulating language, and I think that's bad. But I love what Ocean's doing. I hope that they succeed, because we need more pools like that, and
Yeah.
hopefully Demand Pool does well too. I mean, at the end of the day, even the criticism I had about Demand Pool using Stratum v2 for block production isn't necessarily even fair, because if Demand Pool factors in center transactions in this dystopian future, that will probably be one of its edges, right? Is it will take those transactions, they will have higher fees, and those will just naturally be placed in those blocks to begin with.
Satoshi Nakamoto, I'll highlight this. ZK should announce a token drop to Bitaxe miners. Sure, you're lottery mining Bitcoin, but guaranteed
Are you
mining.
trying to get the man are you trying to get the man to go to jail?
Hey, look, I'm not saying I know ZK like that well, but I don't think a token is in this plan. And what I'll
Yeah.
tell you this: one thing that's not gonna solve mining centralization is a goddamn token.
Also, like, just don't, even if it's a token error, don't try to convince the guy to do that. That's going
Yeah,
to get
I
him
know.
in trouble. I'm
I
not
know.
saying you.
Yeah,
Satoshi Nakamoto, though, thank you for that. We love the troll
yeah.
box.
We encourage you to
We,
troll as much. Yeah. So
yeah, we encourage you to troll as much as possible.
okay.
And
So man, we could talk forever about this.
yeah, this could be an entire podcast series, because you have to touch on so many things.
Yeah,
But
I guess I'm going to breeze through this. So one of the things that he's pointing out is that the Bitaxe as a product could be dramatically improved, and if you can just allocate a little bit of time and money and resources towards it, you can really improve its hash rate. You can add more chips on it. The Bitaxe itself is actually quite efficient as a miner. It's comparable efficiency to these like tier one rigs,
next
the
gen things
S19.
like S21s and things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And you have to consider that, like, there's I don't know if somebody's done like an apples to apples comparison of operating costs, SG&A type stuff, but I would wager that like you just plug a BitX in, turn it up full blast, and you have the option to never really have to do much to it.
That's true. Um, and I want to be clear. I think everyone should go buy a BitAxe and have
Yeah.
fun. You should not expect to make any money from it, but go have fun. Go plug it in. Go tell your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend about it. Their eyes will roll over, they'll glaze over, and you'll think it's the coolest thing in the world and no one else cares.
But you'll be
But go
that
do it.
guy hashing in 2015 who everybody leaves them and you can laugh a decade later.
When you hit a block, yeah. So, I'm not against the BitAxe as a concept. I think it's fun. But going back to your original point, just to poke you a little bit and skewer the logic, because I love you, um, it'll get efficiency gains on par with everything else. So yeah, your BitAxe is producing 1 terahash now instead of 700 gigahashes. But guess what? The next series of miners is doing 300 terahashes. So it's calling it Sisyphean doesn't even do it justice. Like Sisyphus can't even move the boulder, so he's just sitting at the bottom of the mountain
You're saying the
pushing.
boulder gets heavier every time he pushes it up.
Yeah, that's it. The boulder gets heavier every time you push it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love the enthusiasm, and I really do love trying to reignite the pleb mining movement. I think in general it's a net good to have that kind of enthusiasm, but I just don't want people to have any illusions that this is really going to solve some of the big picture problems. At best, it's a fun gimmick that we can beat off to online and say we're making a difference. At worst, people lose money. Right. And that's kind of where I'm at with it. God bless ZK Shark, though.
Here, and I'm gonna come in hard on the other side here, which is,
Yeah, punch
the
me in
whole
the face,
point
dude.
the whole point of ZK's piece is, like, a core component of Bitcoin even working is a bunch of people thinking on taking irrational short-term positions on things and just doggedly not letting go. And one of those is going to be these things such as like solo mining when it just doesn't make sense. Because um I mean, like, maybe if you've stared into the abyss long enough and you just have seen enough people lose money and enough pleb miners like burn down their houses and enough false broken promises in the mining ecosystem, like, yeah, you're going to be disillusioned. But you know what? Who's not disillusioned yet? All these Ordinals people. These are the
Fresh
most
blood.
fresh blood. What we need is, and I see this effect kind of happening, is like ZK saying, the Sultan from Lawrence of Arabia. Um, uh, I go hungry. I don't live in a fancy house because I make sure my people can eat. I am a river to my people. And I see that similar kind of analogy here, saying like, uh, I have been afforded this position of influence, and I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to rile everybody up, and I'm going to lead this like economically irrational movement for a lot of what I would consider to be the spirit of Bitcoin. Because um like we've like the whole like maxi narrative, especially during last bear market, beat the pleb mining discourse to death. Like we hashed that argument every conceivable way possible, and infinite spaces and Twitter arguments and thought pieces were written on it. But those are all people who are outside of the information ecosystem of this new 100 to 200,000 person onboarding event that is Ordinals. Um, if these people actually catch on, and instead of maybe sending 0.003 to their favorite JPEG mint, they send 0.006 to get a couple bit axes. Like now what you're doing is you're just proliferating the amount of people who understand and care about these things. Whether or not even running a bit axe matters is almost beside the point. Because if you consider that Bitcoin is consensus among economic participants, these are people who are economic participants, and maybe they um, advocate at the social layer for companies and people to like prioritize um, the things we care about Bitcoin, such as decentralization across various parts. I mean, this is kind of like the story of how Bitcoin's always operated. Like a lot of the, remember the G hash days, like G hash, it was not really that reasonable of them to um, fork off or send hash rate elsewhere back when they were approaching 51% because they weren't going to attack it. Everybody knew they were going to attack it. They just knew this was unhealthy for the ecosystem. But it
Mhm.
requires everybody who's participating to understand that. What I fear is a future where Bitcoin participants don't actually know what the risks to Bitcoin are. And the longer we can like embed this knowledge about how Bitcoin works into our psyche, like the more optimism
Yeah.
I have
I would
across.
argue that we're already there.
I would too. I would too.
Because there's another we'll talk about that when we're done with this because it's out of the scope of this
Yeah.
conversation.
We should
Uh,
probably move on to the next thing
yeah,
soon.
we should. I just want to make one more point. Because I put a pin in something that you said when we were talking about like pleb miners at home and all of that stuff. A lot of those miners pointed their hash rate towards Slush Pool, formerly Slush Pool, now Brains. Back when it was still PPLNS, which was the original payment method for Bitcoin miners. It's basically you get paid when we find a block, and it's based on how much work that you produce. It has nothing to do with hash price or anything like that. The reason I say that is because actually, kind of, this is to your benefit and to your point. Those home miners weren't doing anything that would have actually helped with decentralization because they're just going to the pools. So the one positive thing to say about if this does take off, or if you were to have more home miners try to solo and lottery mine, is they would hopefully be pointing towards things like Ocean, or they would actually be doing CK Pool and doing their own mining that is just basically self mining, divorced from a pool. So anyway, all that being said, shout out to ZK Sharks for that conversational fodder. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah,
And
I love that we're talking about this. These types of pieces seem to cross the chasm, which is so important. And it's also good for me to like take that and show it to my laser ride friends and for them to go, "Oh, yeah, I fuck with that." Because that's really cool. That is part of what's like it's part of the therapeutic the group therapy process for all us all to realize that we're using the same blockchain.
yeah, I mean, I think that we need to hear that every now and then. The Bitcoin culture wars have gotten out of hand. Too much of identity politics has seeped into the Bitcoin community. There's multiple sub communities, but you know what I mean, into the
Yeah.
people who are really plugged in. I think that's what a lot of like maximalists don't understand is that, and I say this as myself, as like someone who's like kind of a Bitcoin maximalist, but not, I'm not going to go break off my friendship with anyone who buys a monkey JPEG. But you're playing the same identity politics game that is ruining the political and social discourse in America. Like these things can't be core to your identity; they can be a part of it, but you can't just come up with these ideologically driven arguments that are really divorced of logic, like you know people boycotting certain things because of shitcoin allegiance. I mean, it's so childish when you break it down, to a certain point, or like this idea that like if you're a shitcoin scammer, that's the most important thing to judge someone by, and it's like a single issue voter type thing.
Whatever happened with hating the state? Like, have we
Yeah,
lost our way?
honestly. Honestly, and that goes back to the whole arguments about the SEC. I've been very vocal about this. I think NFTs are regarded. I think that they are ridiculous in some ways,
Well,
but I don't want the SEC going after OpenSea. And if you're chalking that up as a win to be like, haha, owning the shitcoiners, then you really need to take a step back and ask whose side you're on. Because if you're cheering on the agencies and the administrative and bureaucratic state, you've kind of lost the thread there, pal.
yeah. And, like I would argue like a lot of the NFTs are marketed as securities, but I just think the issue is with how the state defines and enforces this law, which is more ridiculous in my opinion. I don't really have that big of an issue with some even the more egregious, like, shitty NFT marketing scams.
No.
Um, yeah, I'm just like, "Oh, yeah, I mean, that's just
I mean,
advertising."
yeah, and the one so there's two things here that I would say, and then we'll hop into the tier lists. You know, I part of me understands the whole investor protection thing on face. If your argument is that people don't know what they're buying, then you should go after bad actors issuing these things. For certain things, absolutely, like Hex, 100%. Like the clear Ponzi
You
schemes, like
gotta draw
Bitcoin,
a line. You gotta draw a line at, like,
you
BSV.
gotta
You gotta
draw a
draw a line
line.
at Craig Wright and Hex, yeah.
Yeah, 100% for those things. But I would say most of the people interacting with these ecosystems know what they're getting into. Like the majority of volume with crypto traders are degens who want to trade crypto because they realize it's high risk, high reward. Is there like that's the majority of the liquidity? Now, yes, did Mima buy a ticker on Unisat for a BRC20 token and she lost
Honestly, she probably outperformed your ass.
yeah, she could have. But there's this idea that we're protecting investors. You see this all the time from like the Elizabeth Warrens, and it's like, actually you're just stopping people who have a shit ton of net worth in crypto from gambling it every day. I mean, most of the liquidity comes from token insiders and degens. And there's this idea that you're trying to stop Mima from gambling her pension on, butt token, and it's just not true.
Yeah.
That's like the slightest marginal thing, right? Like that does exist, but it's not the whole liquidity piece. So
She's gonna go down to the actual casino and lose it that way. I mean, it's
yeah.
can she do it from the safety of her computer,
Do
or
it
are
from the
people gonna be giving her
safety of
free
an
drinks all the time? Yeah.
yeah, do it from the safety of an MGM casino or on DraftKings, the way the founders intended.
Exactly. That's in the Constitution somewhere.
Yeah.
We got yeah, we got, built on Bitcoin. She be at the casino otherwise. Exactly. That's what we're saying. So,
Yep.
yeah. Okay, so let's get into, I think, the real meat and potatoes of, why we're here,
Here it is.
which
The
is
price.
we gotta make sure you guys stay locked in. We're gonna do the most important, thing we've ever done, which is, give tier lists to various, um Bitcoin price predictive models over the years. Now, if you only just come into Bitcoin and you think the only thing that anyone's ever talked about is the power law because that's what's hot right now, then listener, you know, just be aware that this is the ninth or 10th major narrative of some visionary way to predict the price of Bitcoin. And if you've not been around, this has been going on for forever. So Colin and I, we're gonna start doing some tier lists. And I guess we'll try to explain what each one is, not too belaboringly. Um, let's do like let's just do maybe the most classic one, which is stock to flow.
Stock to
Can you
flow.
explain what
Trillion
stock to
dollar
flow is?
$100 trillion USD in the house.
Dude,
Uh,
he blocked me 2 or 3 years ago. I've
really?
never said anything critical about him publicly. So
Well, that's probably because you're a shitcoiner, Charlie.
I think I
Uh,
liked someone like I think what happened, I think
probably
he's so
like
petty.
someone criticizing
Yeah.
what he was saying back when you could still see likes on
And
Twitter.
yeah, him and his like little Nordic obsessive person, he's probably like on his phone, like making sure he blocks everyone who likes something like yeah. But dude,
So for
also
those who don't know,
I thought he was over. I thought it was over, but I like went back on
because it
YouTube and
got
it's like
destroyed last cycle because
yeah,
it projected 100K plus. Yeah, you'd
but he's
think, but
back.
no. But you can kind of equivocate, right? You can say, oh well, FTX was a black swan. They were suppressing the price of Bitcoin, some of which might be true. I don't know. It sounds a
Yeah.
little tinfoily to me. And this is just
Well,
someone who's proudly keeps his tinfoil hat in his back pocket at all
you know
times.
what you do? You refine the model, you add more letters to the end. It's
Yeah.
FTX, S2FX, LMAFAO, whatever the hell. You add more letters, you make it more accurate, and we have this stock to flow model, which
Which is Do we have this in C? Was this a C tier?
I would say
Or
B or C. I'm gonna
did
put
you say
C
B?
because it got so many, like, I would say legitimate people to, like, sign on to this.
And it was clearly so. And maybe we
No,
should just break
it
down
wasn't
some.
clear. It was not clear to me.
I guess there's the stock to flow model basically stipulates that the halving cycle precipitates Bitcoin price pumps. I mean, this is kind of the thesis of a lot of bull analysis related to the Bitcoin halving, and this model is kind of the crystallization of that thesis. And what it says is every 4 years you should expect to see Bitcoin's price pump because the stock or because the flow of new Bitcoin coming
New
out
Bitcoin created, yeah.
is increasingly decreasing, while the stock on the other side is rising. So stock to flow models are pretty prevalent in a lot of, I think, commodities analysis. And on its face,
Yeah.
decreasing issuance does seem to lend itself to scarcity over the long term to where you would expect the price to rise. So I think it's like intuitively, it kind of makes sense
Intuitively, it
to
feels
people.
right.
Intuitively, it feels right, but nothing's, I think the biggest way to kind of just denounce this is like nothing stops Bitcoin's price from this does not stop Bitcoin's price from cratering if Satoshi unlocks his 1 million coins tomorrow and it sells them on the open market at spot rates. Like what it doesn't account for is the fact that you have a lot of coins sitting in people's wallets, and if a huge whale or a number of huge whales decide to sell, that's going to just affect the price, because price is ultimately just what you're willing to pay for a good or service, and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the issuance.
Yeah. I might have put this in B, but just the fact that it got so many legitimate people to, like, sign their reputations onto it, like, put such a bad taste in my mouth, because I didn't think it was that crazy of an idea. I was like, "Oh, that this makes a lot of sense." So I paid really close attention to it, um, 'cause, the critics of it, were mostly shouted down by what is a lot of people forget how widely accepted this was as, like, the de facto
Yeah,
model.
it was for sure, especially during the 2020, 2021 bull run. I
Yeah.
mean, this was the gold standard for modeling Bitcoin's price. And
Yeah.
in some ways, I think it probably got a lot of people on the wrong side of the buy sell equation, because they
Yeah.
probably bought the second top in November and October, right when we hit an all-time high back then in 2021.
Yeah.
So
And
I would put it in C.
yeah.
I also personally would put the rainbow chart in C, which is
No, dude, I so
firmly what are you going to put this in S tier just because it's self-aware and a meme?
yeah, so it depends on, like, what heuristic are we using to rank these,
Yeah, I think
because
so.
if we're talking about how much fun I've had with them, this is easily S tier.
Okay.
I'll let
You
you
trigger
argue
so
why it's
many
not
people.
S tier, why it's A tier, but can we, like, lay the foundation of what the rainbow chart
Yeah.
is?
I took the last one, so you take
Okay,
this one.
so, you guys may know Eric Wall, uh, of the Taproot Wizards and kind of general crypto notoriety. Eric Wall, then maybe there was a rainbow chart precursor to this, but he was the one who either invented it or really owned it, which is says, "Hey, there's all these people trying to predict Bitcoin's price. I'm going to make draw a rainbow on a chart, and whenever the price dips into the blue or an indigo, that's a clear buy. And whenever we're getting up into hotter orange and reddish color, that's a clear sell." And you just map it onto there. And this is one of the oldest charts too. This goes back to like 15 or something, maybe.
Okay, so he unearthed it. He brought it back,
Okay,
basically.
he brought it back.
It seems to me. I thought that if this is older, I'm taking you at your word. I thought that he created it, but he might
I
have.
remember certainly seeing this chart on Reddit r/Bitcoin markets in 2015. So
Damn,
someone, maybe
shout
it was
out.
him posting it. That's my thing. It's like I just don't know.
Right.
So the thing is like he has been very, very clear that this is a joke chart that he has made and that it is not to be taken seriously. However, whatever that law, Cunningham's law of the internet or whatever it is, which is like it's the most stupid thing is going to happen. And I would say if you go to like crypto YouTube, this chart is taken as a solid base case for price prediction. His Tapper Wizard, as Satoshi Tree Nakamoto says, his Tapper Wizard even has the rainbow chart in the background. Yes, that's how famous he is for this. So the thing is like legitimate, I wouldn't even say legitimate, but like it's now transcended his self-aware irony into like mainstream discourse. People like, yeah, the rainbow chart, we're going to compare all the different metrics by which we like look at Bitcoin's price health, and like, well, rainbow chart's in blue, which means it could go down to indigo, so prepare for a little more downside. And these is like serious like commentator, and he is just he's been he's watched this become a monster outside of himself. And he gets to like see this in the wild, and it's amazing. I love the irony with which he does this, because why don't you like it, Colin?
It's not that I think it's funny. But I just, if I'm being intellectually honest, it has no more pull than stock to flow, the model that it's lampooning, right? So I would just put it in the same bucket. But then there's a part of me too that like it seems very intuitive, where like, yeah, if the price is really low, maybe that's a buy signal. Granted, stock to flow kind of does the same thing, but to a
This is
less
a
striking visual thing.
self-aware, ironic stock.
Okay, go ahead and put it in A. Go ahead and put
Okay,
it
we're
in
gonna
A.
put in A.
We're gonna put it in A for a couple of reasons. One, it's funny. Two, it's old, so it has the geriatric privilege. Oh, hey, I always forget that it does this. Balloons. And yeah, actually, really, it's only two reasons.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
what?
it's actually, and it's worked for how old it is. It has actually worked,
Yeah, that's
which is
true.
hilarious. Okay,
So maybe Power Law next, which I
let's do
admittedly
power.
don't know very much about, but I would put it in B tier just because it has fewer variables. And it seems like kind of classic technical analysis where it's like, here is support, here is resistance. And to me, it's simple. I like the dumb shit. It's like, oh, is this resistance? Does the line say that we shouldn't go below this? Okay. I trust the line. Maybe the line knows something that I don't. You shouldn't trust the line, but at least it's simple, and a moron like me can figure it out.
Also, like
You
when
know?
you deal in logarithmic charts or powered geometric scaling charts, even though it looks like it converges, uh, into such a small, narrow range in the future, we're still talking about it could be 1,000,000, it could be 50 million somewhere in
Yeah,
the future. I'm like,
right.
that's that doesn't count.
It's at least, yeah, it's at least giving a range.
um, yeah, this is the popular one. I think the person who's owned to this is Fred Thiel, the
Oh, Fred Krueger?
boomer. Do you know who Fred Thiel is?
You mean
Not
Fred
Fred Thiel, I'm
Krueger?
sorry. No, Fred Krueger, sorry.
Yeah,
Shout out
I was
Fred
about to say,
Thiel.
you
We
mean the
love Fred Thiel.
marathon
My bad.
CEO? Okay.
We love Fred Thiel. Fred Krueger, the boomer macro guy who
Yeah,
tweets random shit all the time.
yeah. Not the horror film antagonist from the 80s that would show up in your dreams and
No.
kill you.
Yeah. So the power law, it's a solid B tier because it's like nothing special. It's hard to invalidate this one. It's honestly kind of boring how much people are obsessed with it. Like it seems like the
Yeah.
people who like the power law just like weren't around 2 years ago.
Yeah,
And they
they
like
don't know the perils of stock to flow.
yeah. So
Yeah. I
I
mean, I
also
think everyone likes a chart that says that they're gonna be a millionaire in a few years,
yeah.
right? So, I think that's just
Post a
what
chart that says we're going down and then.
Yeah,
That'll be
exactly.
a good one.
Alright, so what do we got
We
next?
got Dave the Wave, dude. This is
I
an
don't even
awesome.
know what this is. I had to I
Okay, I
looked at
wanna
his Twitter account though, and I couldn't make sense of anything that he was saying.
okay, so he basically I wanna share his Twitter account. Dave, if you're watching, please, we'd love to have you on the show. Um, he basically says,
Yeah, see,
"Yo,
this
man,
is I this is almost an immediate F tier for me because I just can't I don't know what's happening in this chart. Like,
okay, he draws like whiskers. He draws curves on the chart, and each
Okay.
cycle he kind of draws a little curve. He just kind of freehands it basically, and he's like, "We're going by." It comes in waves, right? Those cycles, they're a little bit smaller each time, and it kind of comes in like a wave and swoops up. And then he has another um again, hand drawn curve here where he predicts the next top of the next cycle. Um uh, I love how just off like seat of the pants this model is. It's so popular and he's so adherent to it. Like he's been doing this for so like since 2018, like the wave model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, on the one hand, points for factoring in diminishing returns. That's a clear trend in terms of the return profile of Bitcoin. Each cycle, you have a smaller percentage increase. But yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not even totally sure what's going on with this. Solid D, at least. I mean, a
See, like he's
solid
always
D tier.
tweeting like he's always like sharing charts, which I can't figure out where they came from. It was him. I think it's kind of him like getting a few drinks deep and kind of squinting and drawing some things on TradingView and be like, well, it's part of my theory because it's from me because I'm Dave. This is the way Dave the Waves theory. This is my view. So okay. Where did I put the wave? Okay, I'm gonna say something has to go in D. So we're gonna
Yeah.
put that in D.
Is there no F tier?
There's no F, no.
Okay, that's probably for the best.
No one fails because models uh are wait, they're correct until invalidated or whatever that phrase is.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Um okay, this is actually one of my favorites, which is just a simple log function where we just draw um if you're familiar with like what a logarithmic function is, let me just Google this so people can see. Um or a logarithm, which just says, uh, we can identify according to basically a log function in math, a trend. And you often see this with adoption trends of like the amount of people who own an internet or have internet or own a cell phone, the amount of people who have a refrigerator. Um, okay. And and so like that's what a log function is.
Basically, just like it's essentially like the law almost of exponential returns for things or exponential growth in a way.
Yeah. And I like it because it doesn't actually give you a price. It just gives you like an idea.
A
And
trajectory for, and
yeah.
I think this is honestly how most Bitcoiners view Bitcoin. And it sounds really, for people outside, and even sometimes when I think about it myself, it sounds kind of stupid and hopium filled. But and it does kind of sound like dumb. It's very much the mid curve meme, honestly. In some ways, like every price model is kind of on the right side, or they think that they're on the right side of the IQ curve with how they're trying to
Yeah.
present these things. And on the left side is just, number go up because number go up.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you accept the fact that Bitcoin's not going away, and if you accept the fact that it is a new piece of the international monetary and financial system, then necessarily you would expect the value to increase over a long enough time frame.
Yeah. So
So
I like this A or B. I'm gonna do A just because it makes me feel good. And if I want to show somebody something and I'm gonna pull up my Bitcoin price chart, scroll back to 2010, and then put that shit on logarithmic view. And then all of a sudden, the trajectory of Bitcoin's growth is clearly discernible to the average eye. It doesn't mean that we're going a certain way. It's just like it's so easy to communicate. Like, I'm not gonna put any other lines on this. I'm just gonna show you the percentage change from, period to period. So,
yep, that makes sense.
okay, let's do the all your models are destroyed chart. Have you seen this one?
No.
Oh my god. Okay, I want to Google it. Hyper Bitcoinization price chart.
Oh, that's right. This is the well, in a lot of ways, this is actually the scariest of them all because this is this is the Weimar Republic. This is, Venezuela. This is when your currency becomes so worthless that people are papering their houses with it and using it to heat their homes in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
Which no one should want, by the way.
Yeah. This is a
We should not.
doomsday scenario for everything but your bags.
Yeah, this is like kind of combining stock to flow with all of your models are destroyed. It's like
Yeah, it says all of Bitcoin's insane price appreciation has been is not indicative of the future. In fact, it under predicts the future. And we're going to be logarithmic, but to the inverted
extreme.
upside. Yeah. And this basically says uh, $10 billion Bitcoin by 2030. That is actually what it's saying.
No, it does not.
Yeah.
No, it does not.
Yeah,
what does $1 million get me? A pack of fucking gum at the 7-Eleven under this? I mean, like,
no, look at it. It's, okay, 100K by 2024. That's entirely on the table. So far, we're on track. Then 2020.
I mean, let's just get there. Can we just like actually pause and just highlight that? Let's just get there first, guys.
Yeah.
We've been talking about 100K for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Let's just clear that bar and then we can go further and we can maybe reevaluate.
Okay. 100K 2024. Feasible, on the table.
Feasible. Not ridiculous.
Yeah, 2026 800K. Ambitious, but we've seen that
seems to directly contradict the cycle thesis.
Yeah.
Is there a typo there? Was that supposed to be 80K instead of 800K?
No. That's correct. 2028 we have, because of the logarithmic nature of this chart, it has a Bitcoin in 2028 at $10 million.
Nice. I mean, like, we won't be doing the show in 2028 if it's $10 million.
Yeah,
I'm out on a beach in Cabo or something.
Yeah. Then 2029, 1 Bitcoin equals $1 billion.
Okay. If we had an F tier, this would have to go into F tier. So we're gonna put it in D. I'm
gonna put Dave the Way back in C, and this goes in
D. Okay,
D.
all right, that's fair. We'll be a little kinder to Dave.
Okay,
because that's clearly that Dave's actually has some method. This is just hopium.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
this is the person who's only been able to stack like 50,000 Satoshis and is like trying to like shoehorn away that they're gonna rule the world.
Yeah, that they're gonna be they're gonna have their little fiefdom when we become city-state warlords again, as most Bitcoiners would love to have a monarchic society based on feudalism and nobility. So like that person's gonna, they're gonna have like, maybe 100 acres somewhere in Yellowstone National Park when Bitcoiners can do these.
With their 100,000, 1,000 sats per acre, I give you. That's a good deal.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And then we've got the last one, which is
the block space special, the coin flip.
Coin flip, baby.
I think the coin flip should be S tier. For no other reason than your models are probably worthless, and you might as well just flip a coin to be guessing what Bitcoin's price is going to be at the end of a cycle.
I think the best case for coin flip is the fact that 58K gang, the meme, is now several years old, and we are currently, as we record this, at 58K. And if you had told 58K gang in the depths of their mimetic energy in 2021 that at the end of 2024 we would have hit another all-time high and just be sitting here at 58K, they would have said that is the only scenario that is not going to happen. Yet here we are. It is inescapable. Maybe the best Bitcoin price model would just be the 58K gang logo. The number 58, which is just going to be that for forever.
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's the price tier chart, baby. This is we're doing tier lists now. Um, let us,
If
yeah.
you
If
have
you're
any, yeah, if you have any ideas for what tier list we should do next week, please let us know. We will be taking recommendations. We're going to try to do this every week as long as we have something that we feel like we can confidently just shit post on for the last 30 minutes of the show. So if there's anything you want to see, give us a shout out and we will make a tier list for it.
Yeah, so anyway, otherwise, Colin, I enjoyed writing the plot to Bitcoin season 2, or maybe we're just reflecting on the
I think we're
screenwriter.
reflecting on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's more
We're
open.
reactionary.
Yeah,
We're in the
exactly.
Bitcoin industry.
We should do a React stream. Oh my gosh.
React what to what? To a bunch of autists screeching on Twitter?
Which I think that's actually just called our jobs right now.
Oh my god.
Okay.
Well, Charlie, any final thoughts for the week, and any things that you're thinking about going into the weekend?
I mean, to give you an idea for what the mind of the Bitcoin delusional work cycle looks like, I did not realize that it was a holiday weekend coming up. I I think a lot of us are so divorced from the traditional work schedule that we're like, oh, it's a banking holiday. Good thing I hate the banks. I wasn't gonna go anyway.
Bitcoin's not closed.
Bitcoin's not close. TikTok next block. Bitcoin doesn't take a holiday. Yeah, sometimes I wish Bitcoin would take a goddamn holiday.
Yeah. Everyone
So
needs to calm down. Everyone needs to miners, turn off your computers and turn off your ASICs, and let's all just grab a cold one and hang out.
we call it a jubilee. We need a Bitcoin
A Bitcoin
jubilee.
jubilee.
All right. Without further ado, everyone, see you all next week. Like and subscribe. Bitcoin Season 2. Bye.